finally back. Sorry, it really hasn't been that long. Anyways, so another quick video. Probably for the next 2-3 weeks here, it's going to be a lot of little quick hitter videos as I'm still trying to get this book out. Got most of it completed already. It's just kind of a matter of getting the actual book available. And one thing on that, I think once it's available and once I have it out there, I'm also going to just be giving it away like directly, because I'm kind of having an issue with Amazon. They want to charge like way too much for this thing, and of that big charge I'll get like nothing of it. So it may just end up being a giveaway. But either way, what I was researching throughout the book and as I was writing it down and just kind of reviewing it, I wanted to touch on it because it's something I think everyone needs to know sooner than later, and that's going to be some rematch details. So on the right hand side, if you're looking at your screen, is some information that we went over last year, and I believe even the year before that somewhat. And this is just the percentages as far as how often does the winner of game 1 win game 2. So if, let's say we have a game on a Sunday, team A wins, and then next week, obviously they don't play each other again. There's a bye week for one team usually, or maybe both. And then the other team is playing someone else, and then they'll come back the week after sometimes. That's the quickest turnaround I ever see, and you'll ever see really in the NFL, barring like a week 18 game, and then they're playing again, for the wild card round. Like, that's the only other exception. So besides that, 2 weeks is the earliest you'll see two teams play. And if and when that happens, the winner of game 1 only wins game 2 26% of the time. So basically like 1 out of 4. And then against the spread, they are only 30% winners or coverers, or however you want to say that, but they only cover about 30% of the time. So when you see that real quick turnaround for the rematch, typically the team who lost the first game is going to come back and win the second game, and so it's a really good value spot for us, especially if you see some things in the first game that were kind of fluky, like let's say like a last minute fumble or missed field goal or bad weather, that kind of stuff. You can kind of use that to your advantage, because typically the general public is going to say, oh, team 1 just beat the shit out of this team 2 weeks ago, let's just bet that team again, and that gives us a really good value spot. Now, the rematch kind of time frame here that you're looking for is either really, really quick or kind of a ways out, because if they play each other 9 weeks, separating the rematch, then that loser of game 1 also at least somewhat has the benefit, or is at least kind of like a break-even standpoint, where those weeks we see the winner of game 1 win about 48, 51, 52% of the time. So not a huge swing one way or the other, but at least it's kind of a balanced equation. If you go anywhere between that, so between weeks 3 through 6, the winner of game 1 typically wins the rematch, and that's anywhere from 68 to 70% of the time, or 65 to 70% of the time they're going to win the rematch. Now they're only going to cover 51 to 50, let's say 56% of the time. Really, that 58 is kind of an outlier. Either way, they are typically going to be your value play for those weeks. Now, what the hell is this? Is this just like a coincidence? Is it a fluke? Whatever it is, the one that I really put the most credence here into is that 2-week turnaround. And for me, it's pretty simple. If we see team 1 win, there's really not a whole lot of adjustments to make. They just won the game. What are they going to change? What are they going to look at? Yeah, they can self-evaluate and maybe say we need to, use player whatever more or less. But it's really hard to say like, oh man, we just won, especially if it's a blowout win, and take that back and be like, oh yeah, we need to, tweak and alter all these things. That's usually not what happens. The losing team from game 1 is usually going to adjust more. They're going to make their adjustments or tweaks. They're going to kind of see what matchups that didn't work the first time around and see if they can maybe get some different ones the second game around, and just have an overall different game plan. And so when that happens, the team that won the first game either has to adjust really, really, really quick, like as in first quarter, or they're going to waste a lot of time kind of running into a brick wall because they're trying to counter adjustments that just happened. And it just so happens that if you get behind late in a game, or early in a game, I should say, it's really hard to come back. And it's just, a matter of timing. Once you're down, it's easier for the defense to predict what you're going to do. Everybody else knows what you're going to do. And it's just kind of hard. You're playing uphill at that point. So the team who's going to adjust within those 2 weeks, typically the winner, is what we're seeing here. The rest is kind of the same as far as like the argument for that. Once you get 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks away, the team that lost isn't typically so focused on that rematch because they have other games going on. There's other stuff coming up that they have to get ready for. There's injuries. There's whatever else is going on. But the team that won, if with their original game plan, let's say it's 5 weeks away, they're going to go back in with that same game plan. And the team that lost the first time, maybe they thought of some adjustments at the time, but have they had a chance to execute it? Do they still really, bring that game plan forth? Have there been any injuries? Is there something else they're looking forward to at that point? What's the stance, for playoffs? Are we in like week 16 and they're worried about keeping people healthy? Who knows? So those are a little bit harder to handicap for. Yeah, we have stats for them, but the quick turnaround rematch is really the one we want to key in on. Aside from that, one other thing, and this is a little bit more, usable, and there's going to be more spots for you to take advantage of this. So, went back and looked at all the rematches last year, and we already knew, and we kind of had been talking about it, but I did not ever quantify it. The rematch is typically a higher scoring game than the first game. Just for whatever reason, they come back the second game and there's more points scored. That being said, I went back, I actually quantified it. It happens 60% of the time. The rematch is a higher scoring game than game one. Now, is that good, bad? How can we, what's going on with that? Well, we can bet overs on that, which is great. But if it's two low scoring teams in general, is it really going to help us? Possibly. Just kind of having that little bit of an edge there. But more importantly, and more, actionable, is that I did find any time that first matchup stays under 44 points, not only do we see an increase in game 2, but the total will go over the first game 78% of the time, and it's of that about 60% of the time it goes above 44. Now the above 44, that I'm using that because that's a key number, and it's a little bit more manageable for even teams that are kind of a lower scoring team. Now, what I would do with that information, and what I'm going to do with that information this year, is look to play the public's perception of the game, and that's pretty much what we always do, right? But if you see two teams play against each other, let's say like the Ravens and the Steelers, right? Ravens are going to most likely, and what we're thinking they're going to be this year, is going to have a lot of runs, be very run heavy, kind of a slower offense as far as just play production. The Steelers don't really look to have a lot of great pieces on paper. The quarterback thing is a whole mess there. Let's say that they go out in their first game and the score is 14-10, right? Or 21-14 or something like that. Very realistic, right? That for these two teams, in game 2, you're most likely going to see that total be very low. You're going to see that total be something like 41, 40, somewhere in there. And that's because, one, the perception of these teams is they're very slow, that they're very defensive and all that kind of stuff. And number 2, they just saw that first game stay well under that score. In a spot like that, that's where I'm going to take this over. I'm going to use the statistics to say, you know what, not only did it stay under, it stayed as a pretty low scoring game, it stayed under 44, and now I know 78% of the time that second matchup is going to have a higher score, and it's probably going to go over 44, so I want to bet that over, and I'm going to probably bet that a little heavier than just about everything else. Try not to kind of double down or anything like that, but if you see a spot, you might want to just put a couple pennies extra on it for these rematch statistics. So again, may not be earth-shattering, but it's something to definitely kind of keep in your belt when it comes to handicapping, and knowing that that second game is going to be a higher scoring game, and if it's a quick turnaround, we can probably expect the loser of game 1 to win game 2. So look for these to come up throughout the season. There's a total of, I believe, 96 rematch games. That's just divisional rematches, and that's obviously taking kind of a double dip because both teams have the same rematch, right? Either way, there's going to be a lot of spots for us to use this information. So write it down, keep a note, like the video, whatever, just to come back and watch it later. That all being said, guys, I got to get out of here. But thanks again. I should have the book out by this weekend, and we'll talk more about that. Thanks.